Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume. The Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content. Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Right there. Welcome to the Spark File.
Welcome.
This is your one-stop Gnip for all sorts of creative inspiration.
I'm Laura Camien.
I'm Susan Blackwell. We are makers who make all sorts of things. If you're joining us for the first time.
And if you're like us, you like making stuff all the time, you know that sometimes the wellspring of inspiration gets a little dry.
So we're on the lookout for fresh ideas, images, inspiration that spark our creativity and pique our curiosity, things that inspire us to get off our asses and make things like this podcast.
Or a piece of pottery.
Or a graphic novel that documents your entire 16th year on the planet Earth.
Nice. That's right. So every episode, we're going to reach into the Spark File and exchange some sparks. And then we're going to talk to some folks who spark us as well.
And if you're not careful, you just might get your sparks resparked. So without further ado, let's open up
the Spark File.
Listen,
Susan.
in case you are joining us for the first time, welcome.
Welcome. Hi.
In case that introduction didn't make sense to you, we
sure it
really
did.
are on the hunt for creative ideas or just ideas, like things that give us, when we hear it, when we run into it, when we see it, it like gives us a visceral response that we could utilize for something creative. Or you could utilize for something creative.
You could take it.
That is the point of this bucket of bullshit.
That's right.
It's for you, the listener.
Yeah. Take it. It's some ideas.
Take
some
it.
shit that
We didn't want it.
You know what? Listen, I don't want these ideas. Please take them off my hands.
Please.
No, but seriously,
Cams?
I'm good. I'm good, Susan. Yeah, I got some good news and then some disappointing news today.
What's that?
Well, I read that they used DNA evidence to figure out who Jack the Ripper was. Yeah, but then I read that was probably bullshit.
What?
Yeah, it
What a
totally
build-up
broke my heart.
letdown.
I know, right? That's what I'm saying. I got some good news and some bad news. Apparently, they did publish, like for the first time, they published this DNA results, and it was a guy who was always like on their list of suspects.
Where the fuck do they have DNA that's been kept?
From one of the knives that was left at the scene. But I was wondering, how did they get this guy's DNA?
Has it been in a ye olde refrigerator all this time?
I don't know. I think that's part of why it's questionable. But yeah, so this was the good and the bad. I was like, yes, I feel some sense of completion. I've been on one of those Jack the Ripper tours in London.
Do you like this?
I don't know why. I just feel like it's one of those things. I
think of myself as being more
some
true
closure
crimey.
on.
Really?
Yes. You're more true crimey than me, probably, but I still.
But you,
Jack the Ripper.
J the R.
I mean, I've like walked those streets, and there's people obviously who make a living and talk about taking it and making it. It's people who've made a living creating these tours out of the spots where Jack the Ripper killed people.
Yeah. I don't think I need that. I don't need
what?
that.
I gotta say, sorry, I was gonna say it brought it to life for me in a way, and I was like, no, that's not right. It did
make it real?
It did make it real. And plus, in London, everything is,
tour guides
700 years old. So you're sort of like, this really is the exact spot. It's not like, 14 buildings have been built in this spot since then.
It's like the blood ran through these cobblestones.
That's right.
Ugh,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah. It made it real. But now I'm a little bit amazed because if you think about it, he only killed 5 people. And sorry, that's 5 people too many. But
it's amazing how that lore has stuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting what captures the public's imagination and what sticks.
Right. That's right. It's not like it's the only unsolved crime. I mean, it's just amazing that it has stuck with us.
It's got legs, baby.
It's got legs.
Somebody should do a musical about that. Wait.
Weren't you and I talking about Casanova?
Yes. I was like, who were we talking about recently? Casanova. Like how many ladies do you have to get down with?
That's right.
That still we call
400 years later, your legacy is how many ladies you slept with.
Yeah.
Right?
That's something.
I mean, come on. That's what I thought.
Movies,
that's what
poetry, Casanova.
Okay.
I'm going to name my first baby
These
Casanova.
are not the things we typically talk about, but it's what we're talking about today.
This is what's happening today. Do you want to get into it?
I do.
Did we decide who's going first?
Mm-hmm. You're going to go first because I was taking a sip.
Okay, I'm doing an experiment tonight.
Okay.
Today, I'm going to share what you have that crazy look on your face. You excited?
I'm so excited.
Are you excitable?
Yeah, I am.
I was trying to explain to somebody when we sit down to record these, it does feel like I'm about to get a present. And I'm about to give a present. It feels like a gift exchange.
Aww.
I got you this candle. Ooh. But it's from Anthropology.
I love this candle.
Today I'm going to share what I'm calling a reverse spark.
Oh.
This is a
reverse spark?
I'm making up a lot of terminology. We've got our dark spark. This is a reverse spark.
Okay.
I thought it might be fun.
Okay.
I could be full of shit, but I thought it might be fun and interesting to share with you and listeners, something that I made and then track it back to its root sparks.
Oh.
Is that crazy?
Wow.
I just realized I went to high school with a kid named Ralph Sparks.
Hey, Ralph? I went to school with Lance Sparks.
Shit.
This is crazy.
You know what's crazy? People who have verbs as their last name.
I loved it. He was an athlete and I was just like...
Steve Burns? How badass is that?
Yeah. He burns.
What's Steve like?
Sparks.
Steve Burns.
I don't know.
Okay, so today's reverse spark, I'm just going to go ahead, some of you will know this, some of you won't, but it is the Golden Palace. So the end creative product was a piece that I made called the Golden Palace. And if you haven't heard it, it's basically a story with music. And I made it in collaboration, tiny tip of the hat, with Hunter Bell, Heidi Blickenstaff, Jeff Bowen, Larry Pressgrove, and Michael Barres.
Yay!
You can listen to it on my website, or better yet, go buy it on iTunes. Just go buy it. Spend that 99 cents.
You got it.
It's well worth it. I'm going to say you can't get a lot for 99 cents these days, but I think
you can get a Golden
Is it 99
Palace.
Cents or is it like...
It's probably $1.99 now.
It's still worth it.
I don't know.
It's still worth it.
I don't know.
You need it more than you need a candy bar. So the piece is about my dad, who grew up in a big old house full of kids, and that family was poor, and they were kind of neglected. And he would sometimes go to school and he sometimes wouldn't. And when he was at school, they taught reading via repetition. And he was a good mimic. So even though he couldn't read, they didn't detect his illiteracy until about 3rd grade.
Wow.
But once they did, and they got him on the good path, my dad is really intelligent, really, really intelligent. And he's also, in addition to being a wonderful father, he's also a beautiful writer and a poet. Though if you tell him that, he cannot accept the compliment. And as recently as last week, I was having a conversation with him and I told him just in passing, I was like, well, the thing is, like, you're a really good writer, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no. Like, he cannot take it in. So the Golden Palace was my way of talking about my father and his gifts and his insecurities and how I inherited gifts and insecurities from him, but how I also stand on his shoulders because of the things that he and my mother exposed me to and the education that they supported. So, but it's also about how I really did used to feel like there wasn't a place for me in the world as a creative person, or there wasn't a place for me at the table. And I just want to read you like a little bit from the Golden Palace.
Yes, please.
But seriously, buy this on iTunes because
it's good.
It's good. I'm super proud of it. And modest as hell. So this is from the Golden. Oh, this is from the musical Now Hear This, by the by. Just get the whole cast recording. It's just
splurge.
Filled with
Give
gems.
yourself a gift.
There you go. The Golden Palace is where the beautiful people and the great thinkers of this and previous generations convene to bask in each other's brilliance and to create all the great works of art. It's all going down in the Golden Palace. Michelangelo's David, To Kill a Mockingbird, the X-Men. Yes, great work, worthy work. And the people that populate that place and pump out those important paintings and poems and pieces are deeply intelligent, stunning, clean, privileged people. There is no room in the Golden Palace for girls like me, weird girls, girls who come from what I come from. So that's just like a little tiny piece.
Yeah.
But it really, I've spent a real good chunk of my life feeling like that. So I wanted to just share with you where some of my sparks came from, just as a sort of an illustration. Sparks, as we've discussed on this podcast many times, can come from so many different places. And this is where these sparks, these is sparks, you guys. So it all started when Malcolm Gladwell came out with a book called Outliers. I didn't look up what year it was published. It was
around that time.
A time ago.
Yep.
So most people associate that book, Outliers, with the theory of 10,000 hours. Have you heard that before? Do you know when people are like, 10,000 hours?
No.
10,000 hours. Malcolm Gladwell posited that 10,000 hours of deliberate practice are needed to become world-class in any field.
Yes.
So it was his thought that the Beatles and Bill Gates could become the Beatles and Bill Gates because in addition to other advantages like socioeconomical and they were in the right place at the right time, they had 10,000 hours to practice their specialties. Like Bill Gates had access to a personal computer because of like where his mom worked. They figured out a way to like rig the, I can't remember what it's called, but like, basically to have as much time on that personal computer as they wanted. So before personal computers were out in the world, he was clocking his 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
The Beatles, like, you know, like played and 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 played for years before they became like the band that the world was exposed to. But 10,000 hours is not what I think of when I think of Outliers. When I think of Outliers, I think of the work of a sociologist named Annette Leroux. I had the audiobook. I'm going to burp.
Do it.
You're welcome. I had the audiobook Outliers, and I remember hearing about Annette's work for the first time. Her work articulated something that I felt so keenly, but I didn't have the language for. And when I heard it articulated, I had such a strong visceral response to it. Like, I remember so clearly sitting in the passenger seat of the car and hearing this and just getting super mad, like really, really angry, like a very strong visceral reaction. But let's back that shit up.
What was it?
Girl, I'm going to unpack it.
You better tell me.
What the information I'm about to share comes largely from Wikipedia and also from an awesome free online course offered by the Stanford Center on Poverty and Inequality. I stumbled onto this cool, free online course that you can take anytime. And it's both like, I think you can do like online work and there's videos and stuff like that. So she has a video, Annette Leroux. And in it, she says, we live in an unequal society, and we know that families matter. Families are a big predictor of children's outcomes in many areas. Depending on the family you're raised in, you can have different levels of health, income, education. Right?
Yep.
We all know
Right.
that.
That's right.
So she conducted this study, and she examined parenting in middle-class families and working-class and poor families. They've studied 88 families, and within that, there was a mix of African-American families and white families, because she wanted to understand the impact that social class made
Right.
on the difference in children's lives. Her work then argues that regardless of race, social economic class will determine how children cultivate the skills that they use in the future. So like more than like the color of your skin,
Wow.
your social economic class
Wow.
will be a major determiner.
Interesting.
Determining factor. I'm making up words. So she made it very clear all the families in the study loved their children, but they had different ideas about how they would raise their children. And I think when I have historically thought of parenting styles, I think, oh, those parents are strict. Those parents are lax. Those parents are overbearing. Those parents are
Right.
absent. Those parents are
Right.
neglectful. Those parents spoil their kids. But in her work, she boiled it down to two ways of raising kids: concerted cultivation and natural growth. Concerted cultivation and natural growth. So I think of concerted cultivation as those families that have very structured schedules. They teach children how to advocate for themselves. And I think of natural growth as throwing the kids into the backyard and them playing until dinner time and then coming in and not sassing back. Like just in a nutshell. But those are my words. And in Annette's words, natural growth, which was a type of parenting that was exhibited more in working class and poor families. The parents were very clear. They would give directions. There wasn't a lot of talk back from the children. There wasn't a lot of questioning that came from the kids. When concerted cultivation parents gave direction, the children would talk a great deal. They would protest. They would whine. They would badger to get what they wanted, right? So by definition, wait, were you going to say something?
I was going to say that doesn't sound good. Well, the way you described concerted cultivation sounded pretty good, but that doesn't sound...
Well, here's the thing. Neither, and Malcolm Gladwell made this clear in Outliers, and Annette makes it clear in her work that it's not that either is better or worse. And there's certainly other factors that would inform, but it does set the child and eventually the adult that the child grows into up for a different life.
Got it.
Because if you're a kid who the parents, like, you're basically being taught how to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
Part of that means arguing and saying, no,
True.
you know,
Yep.
for like, I'll tell you why I should get to stay up an hour later every night. Or, you know,
instead of just like, be silent, you're a kid, shut up and go to bed.
Like the adult, as Billy, as they say in Sling Blade, the adults are talking now.
That's right.
So where was I?
Interesting.
So natural growth, which is more in working class and poor families, parents were very clear. They'd give directions. There wasn't a lot of talk back from blah, blah, blah. And concerted cultivation, when the parents give direction, there's blah, 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 whining and badgering and
advocating.
So by definition, the working class parents and the poor parents did not have a college degree. So my parents, I always think of my parents as being very working class. But eventually they got there with their education. Like it took longer, but they did get there.
Did they finish their degrees after having kids?
My dad went back and got his MBA and we graduated from graduate school the same year. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
That's
and
really
I just
cool.
think so he bootstrapped himself, you know.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of like factory work and a lot of like, you know, hard some manual labor.
Yeah.
Until that. But she says many people in the working class and poor parents are high school dropouts, and also stresses that it's important to remember that at least 15% of Americans are functionally illiterate.
Ooh.
So it's reasonable on the part of those parents to turn education over to the school. They're waiting for the teacher's job is teaching, and those natural growth parents are waiting for the teachers to send them a form to give them information. Like it's a more, I will respond to it when it comes.
Yeah.
By contrast, the concerted cultivation parents were very energetic and taking the lead with the children's education in school. So for instance, a mother, this is all Annette's work, but a mother would have the school number in her cell phone, and another mother in the study badgered the school to admit her child into the gifted program, even though the child wasn't really qualified for it. But that's sort of like aggressive for the sake of the kid, like, and the kid sees that and is like, that's how we operate, like that's and sees that being modeled. Does that make sense?
It does.
Just hearing what you've heard thus far, let me read a little more, and then I'm curious to know where you feel like you all fell in this. Do you, was that what you were going to say?
No.
What were you going to say? Say it with your mouth.
I was just curious about, because I feel like where this might be headed is that, are you going to say, I don't want to spoil it, but that the concerted effort, the concerted cultivation parents, their kids got further ahead than the rest of us? Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Is it proven
phenomenally
by research?
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I guess because as I'm listening, and my dad was a teacher, and so I'm thinking of it like from his point of view and the downside of parents who get involved like that.
Yeah, there is a downside.
So that's where my mind was going to, but
hold that. And when we get there, I want to talk about that.
Okay. Coming back to it.
Blah, 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 blah. So middle class, that is concerted cultivation children, tend to be very busy. They have all those organized activities that are structured by adults, allegedly for fun and leisure, but they're a lot like school, like soccer, ballet, and Sunday school and all that jazz lessons. Working class and natural growth children had many important skills, like they could play outside by themselves. They're much nicer to their siblings than middle class children. Yeah, like less like meanness. So I would say the way these are my words, not hers, but maybe like a little more easily disciplined. The natural growth children had a way of having creativity and autonomy that the middle class kids didn't have. But those middle class concerted cultivation kids had skills that were valued by schools and other institutions. So they learned how to interact with people in positions of authority. They learned how to be extremely organized from all of their extremely organized activities. And they learned how to negotiate with people. Because mom, I should get to stay up an extra hour later on a school night. They learned how to use language, and because those skills are valued in schools and jobs, those concerted cultivation kids had advantages that the working class and poor kids don't have.
That's right.
Wow. Yeah. So when she did this work, she did this study of these 88 families, and then she followed up with those children over the next decade. And the natural growth children, she said about half the parents aspired for their kids to go to college, about half. But fewer than that take the basic college prep classes that are required. And even fewer take the SAT. And of those, even fewer apply and attend college classes. So they're extremely intelligent, successful, natural growth children who do want to go to college, and their parents want them to go to college. But again, this is Annette saying there are formidable barriers to making that happen. And it's not only about money, it's about the cultural knowledge and having the information. So it's a beautiful, the way that course, the little bit that I looked at it's really beautifully structured, because I could see how just that tiny little 5-minute video could be super helpful. One thing that she recommended that if parents in a natural growth setting were interested in interested in their kid going to college and they don't have that information, she recommended basically basic networking, which is talk to people at your church, talk to people in your extended family network or in your child's school, and maybe get their help to translate what some of those, what she called critical steps in achieving the American dream. And I think my parents actually, my parents don't fit easily into, they're not just like working class and poor, because even though they both came from such tough backgrounds, like they really provided us with a bunch of culture, and they really did advance their generation and took us to see plays and like took us to workshops that they thought we would be interested in. But it was only as an adult that I saw, P.S., it was a goddamn shockaroo when I saw children and young adults that were being raised in an environment of concerted cultivation, where their parents were like working to get them into special schools and making sure that they were in programs that would give them an advantage, like having the foresight to be like, well, they might want to go to an Ivy League college, so we're going to have to get those activities going now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, what? But there was also, it can be, like you were saying, it can be fraught. There's pressure. There's like all this like really intense networking and all this stuff that I'm just like, oh boy, that makes me tired. But those concerted cultivation children, they do have more resources. They can be tutored. They can apply to all sorts of safety schools. There's more resources provided by their parents, but often it's what Annette calls invisible. And then the kids proclaim themselves to be the ones who did it. Like when they get into the school,
That's right.
Their first, first choice school.
And anything can be fixed by mom and dad if they get themselves into a predicament. I didn't have that.
They don't necessarily see the many, many efforts that went into it on the part of their parents and their class position that made that outcome possible. So a few more differences. A child that has been concertedly cultivated will often express greater social prowess in social situations involving formality or structure attributed. It's that classic, like you walk into a fancy restaurant or a fancy wedding, and it's like being able to like easily fit into
acclimate.
Those, easily like
know your audience.
But this is to your point. While this pattern of child rearing holds no innate positive qualities, it has been linked to an increase in financial and academic success. But negative considerations have included an overburdened sense of entitlement, potentially disrespectful behavior towards authority figures, lack of creativity, and the psychosomatic inability to play or relax.
Well, sure, because they're not really solving those problems. They're not really like... It started out talking about like them learning to advocate for themselves, but really during those years, like mom and dad are advocating for them. Yeah. And that might be a good thing to model, but it sounds like it doesn't all end up great.
What were you to say more about, like when your dad was a teacher and a coach, and were there those parents that were pushing it?
It's weird because like there are certain things that I relate to on both of those different descriptions, because we were definitely working class. My mom didn't graduate from college. She met my dad. My dad was a teacher and a coach. And but when we went to school, there was no solving our problems for us. My dad, like I could not come home and be like, I got a B plus, and Mr. Annan won't round up my grade. My dad was like, you figure that out. Yeah, I was like, I only got one B. Grubber? No, I mean, I earned all my A's, Susan. Just kidding. How obnoxious.
I grabbed.
No, but like the idea, I had friends who would go home and be like, Mr. Vandeska doesn't like me. And their parents would like buy that. And my dad would be like, why doesn't he like you? What are you doing to cause that?
Instead of going in and being like, I'd like to have a meeting with Mr. Vandeska.
Oh my God. Yeah. My dad, no way. Would be like, figure that out.
I work with a lot of teachers who they like were in theater departments, and when their child doesn't get cast in something,
oh my God,
then the parent becomes, just this nightmare parent.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I didn't have that.
Yeah, me too. My dad, there was just no way. And I knew that was just never going to be an excuse. It was always on me to figure that out. And what was the lesson to be learned? If you didn't get cast, what could you have done differently? If you didn't get that home run, why not?
And I've also been privy to, like, in incredibly close proximity to, even like college age and post-college age adult children who are so supported by their parents that they like help them. I don't know why I'm so astounded when I say this, but here I go. Help them get jobs. Like when I said it, I was like, for half the world or for some portion of the world, they're like,
No way.
of course we help. Of course. That's how the world turns.
That's right.
And I'm like, I can't imagine. I can't imagine being in a position where my mother or father networked on my behalf to get me an interview, to get a job at the.
Oh my God.
But this is but I wasn't until I was adult that I was like, learned that this is how the world turns for a lot of people.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is so true.
So
Not for us, Susan.
we're just hardworking scrappers, strivers.
Two scrappy kids.
But her book, Annette Lareau's book, is called Unequal Childhoods.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it encourages us to better understand the impact that social class has on our educational and life choices, and such decisions as who we will marry, where we will live, how we will find jobs. That social class is a huge part of that. So when I learned so that's a bunch about Annette Lareau and her awesome work. When I learned about concerted cultivation versus natural growth, I realized our family provided a little bit of concerted cultivation, but mostly was a family of natural growth. Like was really like, go play outside.
That's right.
Come in when it's dinner time. But I'll tell you, as I said, I got so mad and I thought, really angry. I was angry for kind of a while. And I thought, what could I have been if I had been supported, if I had known what educational opportunities were available to me, if I had been trained to speak confidently to adults, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so much of this stuff came to me later in life and I pursued it to fill in the pieces that were missing. So I used to be mad at, here's a list, my high school guidance counselor, my parents, my former teachers, because I thought, how far could I have come already?
That's right.
If I had had more guidance. But then I realized all those people were raised in an environment of natural growth too. I was surrounded by natural growth people.
Of course.
A little bit about my mom. This is not in Golden Palace, but a little bit about my mom. So my mother attended an all-girls Catholic school and graduated first in her class.
Wow.
Yeah. As a valedictorian, it's funny because hard Scrabble.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really tough upbringing. Just like, I think her parents had a little bit of money, but my grandfather was very, very tight with a dollar. And so there was a long time where my mom only had her school uniform, her Catholic school uniform, and her pajamas.
Oh my gosh.
That was it.
Oh.
That was all she had until she taught herself to sew so she could have clothes.
Wow.
Yeah. So my mother attended this all-girls Catholic school. She was first in her class. As valedictorian, she was offered a full ride scholarship to the University of Dayton. And the headline, we have the article, my mother saved it. It's yellowed in a drawer somewhere. The headline in the Dayton paper read, high school senior turns down juicy UD scholarship to go to nursing school. And I remember, like, as an adult, I remember reading that when I was younger, and I was just like, I thought it was mind blowing. And as an adult, I said, can we talk? Can we talk about
this?
Why did you turn that down? And she said, in truth, she had never even considered taking the scholarship. She didn't have a lot of social skills. How could you, if you only didn't have any clothes, you couldn't go out in your pajamas or your school uniform. Like, so she didn't have a lot of social skills. And the idea of going to university frightened her. Her parents didn't really prize education, and none of her teachers, not not a single teacher ever offered her any guidance or challenged her and said, you can do this.
Oh my gosh.
Not a one. Or maybe they
Wow.
figured she was all set in her plans, which she felt like was also true. She planned on getting married and going into nursing, and that's what she did.
How perfect.
And nobody ever challenged it.
That's right.
So all of
That's
this is
right.
to
Of
say
course.
they didn't know.
Right.
But I also think that, and P.S., I think we all do the best we can, and they did great. Like they did great.
Yeah.
But also I think, or I believe for myself, you get to a certain age and you can't be mad at the past like
You
that.
can't.
Like
You can't carry it on.
you can't. I can't.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to take responsibility for how I am going to engage in the world and
That's
how
right.
I am going to move through the world. And you can't just be like, I can't believe I wasn't raised in an environment where my
mom
parents
and
taught me to
dad.
network. Like, fuck off, Susan. So,
Yeah.
so
that
that's
all the
another chunk
time.
of it. So there's Annette Lareau, right?
Yeah.
There's my real parents, my real awesome parents. So then I would, my friend Hunter Bell, Jeff Bowen, Heidi Blickenstaff, Larry Prescott, Michael Bress made, and produced by Lauren Camien, made this show, Title of Show. And it was this musical. And Hunter Bell and I started co-teaching like creativity workshops. And we would get asked, like, how did you guys go from 4 friends sitting at home making Project Runway jokes to 4 friends sitting on a Broadway stage making Project Runway jokes? And Hunter used to say this thing near the beginning of class, that really struck me. And the teacher became the student. He would say that for a long time, he and I believed that somewhere far from us, there was another place where people who were different from us, more well-educated, more attractive, more intelligent, more feeling, were making all the great stuff. But what we wanted ourselves and our students to realize is that if we wanted to make art, we could make it. If we had a story to tell or a song to sing, we could sing it. And hearing him say that was a real breakthrough for me. And simultaneously living through a creative process where side by side with my friends, I was making my own work. That was a real breakthrough for me. And I realized, I could be raised in an environment of natural growth and enjoy all the positive benefits of that and still learn how to navigate institutions and grant proposals and all sorts of social interactions. I could learn to speak to all the people as if they were my peers, which was the thing that led me to coin the phrase, no one is above me, no one is below me, haters to the left. It comes out of this because I was like, I felt for so long like I was less than or subjugated myself to other people because I thought everybody had this concerted cultivation thing figured out. And then I was like, don't do that to yourself, Susan.
Yeah, they don't.
And that at the end of the day, if I chose to, I could make anything that I wanted to make. So any questions, students? I wrote The Golden Palace just to organize my thoughts and get my arms around all of this and to come to peace with all of it, to come to peace. Because all of this stuff, my feelings about what my parents, I don't want to, they can tell their story the way they want to tell it, but I just think that in so many ways they had a really tough upbringing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make peace with what they came from, what I came from, how they advance things so that I could go to college and study what genuinely interests me, how they pulled themselves up from their bootstraps, how it's not perfect, but it's not perfect for anybody.
Right.
It's not perfect for anybody.
That's right.
And ultimately that whether you were raised in an environment of concerted cultivation or natural growth, it's your choice to exercise your creativity. And he may have worked in a factory, but my dad is also a poet.
Yeah.
And I may not have gone to Juilliard, but I took the path that I took and I'm wildly creative.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
So by the end of the piece, spoilers, but please go buy it for $1.99 on iTunes. I come to a different conclusion, and that is this. There is a golden palace. It's a Chinese restaurant located at 321 Nashua Street in Milford, New Hampshire.
Oh.
It's not over the horizon. It's not out of reach. The Golden Palace is anywhere we make it. It's anywhere we make anything we want to make. And there is room for all of us. Illiterate boys, the fathers and factory workers and poets that they become, awkward girls with weird faces and strange ideas. We all belong here. And that is how I came to write The Golden Palace.
Oh,
Hashtag reverse spark.
Reverse spark. I like that a lot, Susan.
Oh,
because I think people don't always know, like, oh, I could be like reading an article or reading some statistics on, someone's research, this and that, and out of that spring a creative idea.
So this is the point I was trying to make with this. This isn't just like, I am delighted by the fun stories that Laura Camien tells me when we do this podcast. Fucking lighted. But my point is, if you hear something here or you bump into something somewhere in the world and it gives you a strong feeling, and sometimes that strong visceral feeling is like, this is making my blood boil. And sometimes that strong feeling is, this is making me laugh, or this is making my eyeballs become cry balls. Like,
that's right.
Pay attention to those things because there is creative gold in there.
That's right.
And who knew something like a piece of research that Annette Leroux did. You know what I mean? Like, it's a piece of research which sometimes you'd be like, oh, that's so dry. It's research. But it gave me a strong feeling.
That's right.
And strong enough to be like, I need to spend time with this to make something out of it and get my arms around it so that I can, for me, it's a lot about synthesizing and understanding myself and being able to be like, and now I put it away. Now I'm at peace. Like, and now I can be like, what's the next thing that I need to understand? So that's why I wanted to do this reverse spark to just show you sparks are everywhere. And you can make stuff out of them. And please, just $1.99 on iTunes.
There you go.
I'm just kidding. I'm saying it for you because it's just, I'm so proud of it. I really think it's good. Pridefulness is a sin.
Oh. Need my headphones.
Thanks to our sponsors.
Hi.
We don't have sponsors.
We don't have sponsors.
Do we? Or maybe we do by now.
Ghostlake.com.
Wild success and sponsorship has been sponsored.
We can't even fit them all in. I'm sorry for all the sponsor breaks.
Well, who's your today? As of today, who's your dream sponsor?
Oh, come on. You
and remember,
do this to me every time.
No, I don't. But remember, whoever it is, they send you either like a gift certificate or a box of free shit. Who is it?
No, you know who I just came to mind? It's out of anger.
Who?
It's New York Health and Racket Club that keep charging my card every month, even though I've said I want out.
That's illegal.
I know, but now they're sponsoring our podcast, so I forgive them. Now it's all worked out. Now they're paying me back.
Sparks come from many different places.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. See? Do you want to name your favorite sponsor?
I'm going to say, what do I want? I want a Rolex.
For the goodie bags. Rolex. Thank you so much for the goodie bags.
Rolex. I love it. I love my new watch.
Love you.
And gold with diamonds. Favorite.
I love it. Susan, my spark
I'm so excited. This is when I get excited. What you got for me?
Today's spark is called Dead Poets Society.
Wait.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is a bait and switch.
It might be. I mean, it's not.
You're like, it's not, the movie starring Robin Williams
the movie,
and Knox Overstreet.
Yeah. Oh, he was so good.
I know.
So here's a fun fact. I only recently discovered that both Susan and I have an affinity for the sentiment that Ralph Waldo Emerson often wrote about, this idea of forging your own path.
Oh, word.
You know, he said...
Did he write that?
Well, he said, do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail.
Oh.
And he wrote the poem, The Road Not Taken, Two Roads Diverged in the Wood.
No. Robert Frost. That's Robert Frost.
You know what? That's Robert Frost, Susan. Sorry. Sorry. Yes.
I was like, I have that refrigerator magnet.
I was just going to say your refrigerator magnet.
That's right.
So I just recently discovered that you and I have
Not
this
to be
affinity.
a basic bitch, but I fucking love that poem.
I fucking love it too. And that's why I was like, this concept of the road less taken or the road not taken, taking your own path.
I'm psyched you are doing this because
Well,
I wish what this was going to, well, it should be what it wants to be. I was like, so I
we're switching my
recently,
spark right now.
could you
It's Robert
refashion your
Frost.
spark? I recently heard somebody talking about that poem and I was like, I don't understand that poem at all. Or I understood it to a certain level, but I was like,
The Road Not Taken?
Yeah.
Have you been like butchering its meaning or
No,
something?
I think I was like, if it has 7 levels of meaning, I was like just chilling at level 3.
Like level 2.
And I was like, this goes deeper.
Well, the refrigerator magnet doesn't cover it all.
Why don't you go fuck yourself?
I'm just kidding.
I love that
I'm
magnet.
totally kidding. I love that
I
magnet
did
too.
Yeah.
And that like got me thinking about this spark because I remember distinctly proposing that quote was like our senior year quote.
Yes.
That's right. Seaman High School, 1989.
Seaman High School? What did you just say?
Seaman. S-E-A.
I'm so sorry.
M-A-N.
My condolences to you.
Okay. Seaman as in a Viking.
What I was going to say,
know.
what was your mascot?
The Vikings.
Okay.
Yeah, but we did sometimes play the Topeka High Trojans. You know what those headlines were like.
God.
Mhm. Sparks right there. Take it and make it.
Sparks.
So anyway, I think I was in high school when I first encountered like Emerson, Frost, Whitman, all of those like
Emerson, Lake, Palmer, all of
Yes,
those
all of those
classic
guys.
rock guys.
Love those guys.
Sorry, I just keep pulling you off your spark.
You know what? I expect it by now.
Go ahead.
It's like why
Go
do
ahead.
you? And I think it was like not until very late. Like I grew up in Kansas. We just talked about that. Poetry was not something that was
Prized.
maybe valued as much as it should
Sure.
be. But I did learn a little bit about it. And then in June of 89, right after I graduated, is when the movie Dead Poets Society came out.
Yes.
And I was smitten with this grandiose idea of like schools with like 200-year traditions. And
Is this shaping up to be a perfect compliment to my?
I don't know, because you know mine. It's not going.
All right.
It's not
Yeah.
going.
It's going somewhere surprising.
Somewhere
Yes.
else.
Yes.
Well, maybe not that surprising, but you know, we'll see. Is my answer to that. We'll see. But I was really, really smitten, and I was so like excited by that concept of having this passionate teacher and all of these traditions and this idea of like being spoken to by dead poets from the grave. You know, it was so, I don't know. Anyway, like I said, we didn't have a lot of that kind of feeling in Kansas. So a couple months ago, one of America's most popular and best-selling poets died.
Is this a Mary Oliver jam?
Her name was Mary Oliver.
Fuck you.
Fuck you, Susan.
awesome.
No, you. No,
Blew
you.
out my mic. I cannot believe you. Are you sparking on Mary Oliver?
I'm sparking on Mary Oliver.
I am in love with you.
I love you too, and I thought you might love this.
I love her.
You know, she died in January of this year. She was 83, and when she passed, I learned more about her than I ever knew before. You know, I think that like there are popular little bits and things, probably much like the two roads diverging, you know, in a wood. A couple of lines here and there that like are so popular, but then there's so much more.
Can I just say out loud?
Yeah.
There is nowhere else on the planet I'd rather be than sitting right here, right now.
Oh, we're going to have some fun here then.
Bring it to me.
So a couple things I thought were interesting is like she grew up in a very dysfunctional family. She grew up in Ohio. Did you know that?
I did know that because a lot of her did she grow up in southwestern Ohio?
That I don't know.
I'm pretty sure she did because a lot of her writing, I was like, this is my neck of the woods. The town she refers to, the things, the rivers she refers to, topography, animals. Native indigenous people,
Yep.
I was like, this is my neck of the woods.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what's so fascinating about her, eventually she did move to Florida, but for so long, because of the things she wrote about, people were like, you should travel, you should see this, you should that. And she's like, I like my neck of the woods.
Yeah.
I like my walks, my paths, my sights and
Was
sounds.
she natural growth or was she concerted cultivation?
You know what? I don't know. But now I'm going to ask that of every person.
So what are you? You can kind of tell. You can smell it.
Yeah.
You can smell it.
Well, she had a really rough childhood. So I suspect, and I read that she was like neglected by her parents. She was sexually abused. I don't know by who. But so it wasn't, I wouldn't say she was, cultivated in any way.
Yeah.
But she said that because of this rough childhood, she made a world out of words, and that was her salvation. Two things she said she loved from a very early age were nature and the natural world, and the dead poets, she said, were her pals when she was growing up.
Holy shit.
Okay. So a lot of her poems, she got her ideas from these long walks that you're talking about. And I thought for sure we could both relate to like her upbringing in a lot of ways. I think it was very working class.
Yeah.
Her dad was a teacher. My dad was a teacher.
Wow.
Her mom worked as a secretary in the school. My stepmom was like the executive assistant. Thank you very much at the school. So anyway, I just thought, God, there's just so much more connection than I realized. Of course, I had been familiar with like the line from The Summer Day, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Which has had a resurgence because of that movie. Reese Witherspoon was in it. The Wild.
Sweet Home Alabama.
Yeah, Wild. Oh. No. Good guess, though. Good guess.
Thank you.
Good guess. A little more recent. Wild. Cheryl Strayed, right? Strayed.
Yeah.
Strayed.
Yep. One of those.
She used that like in her book. So Mary firmly believed that poetry mustn't be fancy. She lived for many decades with her longtime partner, Molly Malone Cook. She first published in her 20s. She has more than 20 volumes of work to her credit. She won a Pulitzer, a National Book Award, but she really wasn't motivated by these critical awards. In fact, like she was most known for like how accessible her work was to people.
It is. To me, it reminds me, it gives me the same feeling, though it's for an adult readership as opposed to for young people, but it gives me the same feeling that Laura Ingalls Wilder does. That sort of like just a cool breeze blowing over tall grass kind of feeling.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's an amazing way to describe it.
I'm an amazing wordsmith.
You are
but it really does. Like
wordsmith.
some of those, it's crazy. I mean, I guess it's not uncommon. I think about her writing all the time and was thinking about it as recently as in the last 24 hours.
Really?
I was having a discussion with somebody and they're really, really going through it and like all different areas of their life.
There's so much that they could gain from her.
And I was like, she has that piece of poetry, which I don't have at my fingertips and I don't have memorized, but it's about mental illness and like the carefully pulling out the stitches of embroidery, like just like the slow work of getting well and healing. And I was like, this is going to be some Mary
useful.
Oliver slow work for you. Oof. So I've just been thinking about her. I think about her writing all the time. And it is accessible, like you're saying.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And so accessible that some critics kind of put it down for that. Not at first, but here's a few examples of just the kind of accessibility. It seems simple, but it's so deep, right? So she wrote, what I want in my life is to be willing to be dazzled, to cast aside the weight of facts, and maybe even to float a little above this difficult world. She wrote, it is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in this broken world. And people were like,
Did she write that yesterday? That's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
It's what's incredible. And then, of course, she's quite famous for this: instructions for living a life. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. So those are like just some simple ones. There's a writer named Ruth Franklin that said the way she writes these poems, it feels like prayers. She channels the voice of somebody who it seems might possibly have access to God. And I think that that's why so much of it is so popular. The brevity of some of her poems is what endeared her work to a broader public. Clerics quoted her work in sermons. Poetry therapists used her work. Composers set it to music. Yes,
I just had a spark.
Hand in the air.
I just had a spark. Bart Freundlich, if you're listening to me, I'm sure you're not, but if you are, you need to write a screenplay about Mary Oliver and Julianne Moore. You need to play Mary Oliver.
Oh, please do that.
Bam.
Boom. We're
Bam.
done for the day.
No, I'm serious.
Boom.
That would be great casting.
That would be amazing.
You just get some of those thick 70s glasses.
Oh my God.
Julie, you're going to be great in that movie. Sorry, go ahead.
You're going to be phenomenal.
That's a good start.
But basically, Mary enjoyed a following that it's safe to say most poets did not enjoy, at least not in their lifetime. And with the popularity, and she actually sold books. And as time went on, critics, of course, got critical. Yeah, they got more critical. So I really think...
Wait, meaning that they enjoyed her work more?
No, they picked it apart more. It was like, this is so simplistic.
Fuck off.
And
you do it. You try.
You do it, right?
You try. Man in the arena, you try.
And you and I have talked about this before. What is it about... once your work speaks to the masses, the need for critics to pull back their support of it. I'm well, it's actually not that good. It's not that,
I don't know,
meaningful. And I think that's discouraging as an artist. And we do it to each other sometimes.
We sure do.
Well, not you and I. Not you and I.
But the big we. Yes, we
right?
do.
Let's stop doing that.
Let's stop doing that.
So a couple things, we've talked before about our sparks. We're trying not, folks, just so you know, we're trying not to just dedicate an entire spark to a human being who's lived for 83 years on this life, because it's too much.
It's a 7-hour podcast.
It's a 7-hour podcast, which, maybe one day, a special episode.
Oh, God. A marathon for charity.
So I just pulled out a few things,
Great.
Because Mary often wrote about nature, she was inevitably compared to her dead poet pals, Whitman, Robert Frost, and others. She was, now she's part of her own Dead Poet Society.
Wow.
And she's part of that. Here's one of her many, 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 many poems about nature, Watering the Stones. Every summer I gather a few stones from the beach and keep them in a glass bowl. Now and again, I cover them with water and they drink. There's no question about this. I put tinfoil over the bowl tightly, yet the water disappears. This doesn't mean we ever have a conversation or that they have the kind of feelings we do, yet it might mean something. Whatever the stones are, they don't lie in the water and do nothing. Some of my friends refuse to believe it, even though they've seen it. But a few others, I've seen them walking down the beach holding a few stones, and they look at them rather more closely now. Once in a while, I swear I've even heard one or two of them saying hello, which I don't think harms anyone or anything, does it? Susan, when I go home to Florida, I talk to the trees.
You do.
Do you talk to your little succulent plants? Do you talk to your mountainside?
I do a little bit. Yeah, I guess I kind of do.
I just wonder. Sometimes I get up and I go outside and I'm just like, hi, everybody.
Yeah.
You're blooming. You look beautiful. Keep going.
It's an interesting little phenomenon. I have more plants now than I've ever had in my entire life.
Too many to talk to.
Oh, boy. And like a Kathy cartoon. Ooh. And I do, when I touch them and water them and admire them and look at their growth, I get a feeling it's that, what should we call that feeling? It's like, it's the Laura Ingalls Wilder feeling. It's the Mary Oliver feeling. It's that feeling of just like looking into nature's face and us smiling at each other. You know what I mean?
I like that.
And I was also saying to Nathan the other day that the thing that I love about plants, as opposed to other, I don't know how you characterize those things, hobbies, is that you put, like you give it some water from time to time. You might fertilize it. You keep it near a window so it can have sun, and you go away. And when you come back, it's changed. And I was like, what else does that?
What else
does that?
It's growing on its own.
It is having a whole life.
Yeah.
It's having a whole life.
Exactly that.
It delights me.
Susan, I'd be delighted if you would read this poem I chose for you.
God, I've got to read without just a cold read.
It's a cold read. You can do it.
My vision.
I just didn't want my voice the whole time. You got this.
Okay. Oh, you trying to make me cry.
No, you won't.
This is called I Have Decided. This is a cold read. I don't know how it ends.
By Susan
I just saw the first line. I have decided to find myself a home in the mountains, somewhere high up where one learns to live peacefully in the cold and the silence. It's said that in such a place, certain revelations may be discovered, that what the spirit reaches for may be eventually felt, if not exactly understood, slowly, no doubt. I am not talking about a vacation. Of course, at the same time, I mean to stay exactly where I am. Are you following me? You hippie, you goddamn dirty hippie.
I know.
That's beautiful,
that, right? And
I feel that way.
I wondered if you felt that way about moving to the mountainside. I've never
seen that poem before. But I guess she's got 20 slim, beautiful little volumes, and I have not read all of them.
Yeah. But I'm kind of fascinated with this nature thing, because if we're totally honest here, which I think we are with our tight little group of listeners
and our tight little buttholes. Yes.
You and I have both lived in New York for a very long time.
Yeah.
And if I'm honest with myself, I think I devalued for quite some time the place that nature could hold in me as a human being, but also as an artist, and, work inspired by nature. I think I don't know. I think I sort of put it out of my mind, put it out of my, because it wasn't a part of my daily life. I think I tried to diminish its importance. And now in Florida, I have had people come to visit in Florida, and they're New Yorkers. And I'll be like, oh my God, we have this eagle. This eagle lives in this pine tree next door. And I'll talk about that. I'll talk about like, oh my God, one day these vultures ripped a squirrel apart, like right here. You can like even find a little skeleton bone. And I would be talking about the birds, the animals, the trees.
What do they make of it? What do the New Yorkers make of it?
I had a friend that was literally like, if you don't shut the fuck up, I hear about another fucking bird. Like they were just like, I see pigeons. That's it. I don't care about the birds. And one day, Susan, I have to tell you, this was like so perfectly on cue. Literally one day a friend was visiting and she'd had enough. I could tell she'd had enough. And she was like, okay.
No more squirrel talk.
Okay, we're good. Just as she's saying that, 3 horses come barreling down the street. They weren't wild horses. That would make a better story.
Did they have riders?
No, they had gotten out of someone's stable and they were running home. But it had like this, they're all galloping like in unison by. And I was like, so you see? This is the kind of stuff that happens here.
God damn.
No, she was like, I can't believe that just
like
happened. On cue. But I just wondered if you feel that way now that there's more nature in your life.
I feel like I lived in the city for decades, and I love nature, but and quiet and peace and space. But I just like took that part of me that loved that and just kind of like compartmentalized it for a while.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Inwood and had this apartment that had this like ridiculous balcony.
Yes.
And I started growing plants on the balcony, and I had like 70 I had like crops, like I was growing corn,
Oh my
kale,
God.
tomatoes, squash. Like I was running a farmer's market outside that balcony. And I was like, I need to do this in the country. Like I was like, I need to, it's time. I'm old enough now. I want to have that peace.
You know what I wonder sometimes, like, is this because this is happening at a certain age? I'm like, is this because I'm old now? I'm getting old, that I'm like suddenly appreciating nature, or is it just the circumstances? But we have these oak trees in our yard, and sometimes they like fill me with tears. And I think the act of planting a tree is the most selfless act. These trees, the person who planted them never got to see them in their glory. They're 100 years old. So you're just like, you did that for the next group of people to enjoy, because you had to know.
That's a nice
you
metaphor.
were never going to
Put that in your poem, Mary Oliver. Plant a tree.
Okay, plant a tree.
I love that.
All right, so I also wanted to bring this topic up because I was surprised, and I kind of want to look up, like, when did she write this? You and I have talked numerous times about our goals for more creation, less consumption.
Create more, consume less, baby.
Mary wrote this: impossible to believe we need so much as the world wants us to buy. I have more clothes, lamps, dishes, paper clips than I could possibly use before I die. Oh, I would like to live in an empty grass, no planks, no plastic, no fiberglass. And I suppose sometime I will. Old and cold, I will lie apart from all this buying and selling with only the beautiful earth in my heart.
Fuck. So,
and that is where Mary is now.
We're going to, I was going to say, she stopped consuming.
She is now
fiberglass now.
She's a member of a very elite club, poets who will continue to speak to us for generations from the grave.
I love it.
Before we wrap this, I just want to say one more thing.
I want to talk about Mary Oliver forever.
She also wrote, to pay attention. This is our endless and proper work. And in her poem, When Death Comes, she wrote, when it's over, I want to say all my life, I was a bride married to amazement. And I feel a little bit like that's the work we're trying to do here on the Spark File. Train ourselves to be paying attention. Yes. Little messages from the grave, little messages from statistics and research.
Little messages
everywhere.
Like we were watching some, let's be honest, fair to Midland television last night.
That's right, fair to mid.
And something flashed across the screen and I was like, there's a spark, but I'm not going to say it out loud because I'm going to surprise you with it later. And I was like, we are training our brains. I love it so much we're on the hunt. We're on the lookout. Right. And it has made the world, just in the short time we've been doing this, it's fun. It's vivid.
It's so fun all day. And it's like you have a little secret. And you're like, wow, that made me feel a little tingly. That made some, sparks fly in my brain.
But whatever your creative outlet is, whatever your self-expression is, I think it's incumbent upon the maker to have to not be passive, to sort of have your eyes and your ears and your heart open.
That's right.
And your brain, and to be like letting those, it's like krill, just like letting krill move through the whale. Krill, just like you have to, you got to, that nutritious absorption. Right. Krill? How's that for a metaphor, Mary Oliver? I feel like a regular Mary Oliver.
In the words of Mary Oliver, that's the big question, the one the world throws at you every morning. Here you are, alive. Would you like to make a comment? Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
Here we are, alive. Let's make some comments. Let's make some stuff.
Fucking hell. You Mary Olivered me.
I did.
What a great surprise. It's so funny because before we started, you were like, I don't know if this is Mary Oliver.
You can expect that every week. That's my little vampire.
The highest quality. P.S. Those things you shared, so many of them I have not heard.
There's so much.
And there's so much.
No joke. We
And
could do 20 hours on her.
It makes me, maybe we could post it on social media, like some of our favorites.
Oh,
and
awesome.
if you all are listening and you have favorites,
please
you'll let us
send
know.
them.
But man, she's
still speaking to us.
She is a spectacular
every day
creative being. Fuck me. I hope that all of this put another bunch of sparks in your spark file. I know it did for me, Lori Camien. Listen to me when I say this. If there's a spark you would like us to explore, if you've got a spark that you'd like to share, will you please email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com, and be sure to subscribe to this shenanigan on wherever you get your podcasts. As the children say, subscribe, rate, and review.
Listen up. If something tickles your fancy and gets your creative juices flowing, it's your turn to take this little spark and fan it into a beautiful little flame.
You got to write it. You got to recite it. You got to knit it. You got to go on and get it. You got to take it. And you got to make it. We'll see you on the next episode of The Spark File.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi friends, Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.